My name is Lori McDaniel, and I work for Pattern Energy. They are a global wind farm company. What I do there is IT project management and IT training. And I also have a passion sort of ministry on the side type of thing where I do diversity, equity, and inclusion work as well. And I'm a trainer and a consultant to small businesses at this point in that area as well. And I have really enjoyed working with learning clusters and learning all about that. And I'm excited to talk about that today. How did I find Crystal and their work? And it was in an ATD newsletter, the Association of Talent Development. The headline really, the words learning cluster design really stood out to me in the title of the article. And when I read about what that meant, I thought, oh, this is for me. This is different. This is innovative. I want to go learn about this. I really had quite a few. I think to just give some highlights, I think a really big aha moment for me, we learned how to get really connected to the needs of our internal customers, and how in learning and design, we often really go deep enough with what people really need. And we end up designing learning for, maybe just the surface of what they need, or maybe just one or two things that they need when they really actually need, let's say 3 to 5 things to be in the outcomes. That was really, and I love the system that it's simple and yet powerful in what is taught in the workshop for how to accomplish that. And then it's like you just hit it out of the park. People are so much happier. They're so much more satisfied with what they end up getting as the outcomes. Also, what I'll mention too, which I thought was so great, is how you can embed learning into the flow of work, into the flow of life, instead of having, like I do a lot of 60 to 90-minute trainings. And sometimes I never see people in those trainings who really need it because it's just too much time. And so I love how we learned how to break everything down into small chunks that are manageable in the flow of work, in the flow of a day, in the flow of life. I thought that was really powerful. I think one thing that I thought, it was so obvious to me once I was in the workshop and Crystal was teaching us how to have interviews with people, how to actually schedule an interview with someone who your training is going to impact, right? Not just the people who've requested the training from you, but who's going to actually end up, the type of person who's going to end up taking the training. And so for me, for example, at Pattern Energy, I actually called up managers of wind farms, and I had a couple of really interesting conversations with them. And I took the time to actually ask them about their pain points, whether it had to do with my wheelhouse or not. Like, what are your pain points in general running a wind farm? What's that like? And it was like this whole world opened up of how wind farms work, what they're dealing with. And because I had that wider view of what they have on their plate, then I could see a lot more opportunities for learning to impact those pain points in particular, right? And also what I discovered, much to the delight of my technology help desk colleagues, were issues that were not resolved, that I could kind of say to my team, hey, help desk, did you know that this wind farm has this particular set of issues? Can you help them out? So it ended up being this twofer, if you will, like where I got to create training that directly impacted their pain points instead of a training I thought might impact their pain points, kind of guessing. And then I also uncovered some things that got to get resolved simply because I was having this interview. I was using the interview technique that I learned about in the workshop. What I did there, and what I want to do with this question, is I'd like to talk about the two different fields that I'm in. I went ahead and created a whole Office 365, including Microsoft Teams, OneDrive, and SharePoint learning cluster, where people, instead of coming into a training or me designing like a recorded training that's like an hour or 90 minutes if it's an advanced topic, what I did was I created it. I called it Learn, Microsoft Teams, OneDrive, and SharePoint in 10 minutes a day. And so it was Monday through Friday, where people could, on Monday, have a kickoff session of 20 minutes, get oriented, know where to go to click on their video for each day and know how to do their assignment for each day, which was roughly 10 to 15 minutes total per day. And then we had a wrap-up session on Friday of about 15, 20 minutes. And the same outcomes were achieved with far less time and effort, and they could just do it in the flow of their life and working from home and whatever else people are dealing with. And so that was really revolutionary, and I plan to do a lot more of that within my company. And then secondarily, I'm so excited about what is possible for diversity, equity, and inclusion work. So many DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI types of initiatives, they fall flat. Like it's great when people have a workshop or maybe even a 2-year initiative, but I think that they miss that whole transformation often has to take place in the flow of work and the flow of life. It has to become embedded. Like there's a continuum of learning happening. That's almost impossible, right? Because people just don't have that 60 to 90 minutes. They don't have that half day or the 2-day workshop, etc. And so I feel like learning clusters are revolutionary for DEI as well, because you could do something very similar, like a Monday to Friday, learn about allyship, learn new diversity terms, get a new perspective in 15 minutes a day, and then you have it Monday through Friday, etc. And so I'm in the middle of designing some of those as well. And I'm really excited for the potential. I think that the way I've been approaching it had been approaching it up until the workshop was kind of traditional. Let me design for example, I just wrapped up a 10-week program, and it was 2 hours a week. And it was a particular skill set. You could argue that it was 2 hours was needed for that 10 per week was needed. But I've been revisiting that and thinking, okay, well, actually, there could be a version of that that's over the however many days or weeks that's in chunks rather than like a 2-hour block, perhaps more frequent, like a daily. I'm considering like the daily approach, but a really short amount of time. And so you still get the same outcome, but people don't have to put aside that 2 hours, that larger chunk of time. And I'm just excited about what that opens up, because I think that people who feel they have no time, to take on that kind of work and growth and development. I really appreciated the social learning aspect of what we learn as well. I thought that was really great, because not only do we have that time constraint, I think, en masse, we're all kind of dealing with a time constraint, but then also social learning is so powerful. It's more enjoyable. And there's just so much research, as Crystal was sharing with us, and certainly if you're in learning and design, that social learning really works. And so I loved that was woven. That's part of what she teaches. And I definitely, that was part of I didn't mention it, but that was part of the whole design thinking behind both the Office 365 product. There's a social learning aspect where people come together, in that case, I assigned people a buddy, right? So for that Monday through Friday, they have a buddy to go through the program with and check in with. And then in the DEI work, it's similar, as well as having a social place where people can come in. It's like a Facebook group site, but not Facebook, where people can talk, right? And be in community as they're learning and ask each other questions, like if someone gets stuck or can't find a resource, right? There's like a community of learners around you. And I find that I have found that for myself personally, when I've experienced that, it enriches my learning. In my buddy learning, right? I had a buddy. I was really surprised at much how much I learned from her perspective. I couldn't think like her. And so when we were sharing about the learning, it really deepened and enriched my experience. So I'm excited to weave that in as well. I loved the cohort aspect. It's so much easier to learn. I don't know if this is for everyone, but for me, if I'm in a structured group of some kind, as opposed to just like clicking videos and maybe putting answers in on screen and just kind of reading things on my own, I find that it's so rich to be in a cohort, in a group that's facilitated in some way, whether it's lightly facilitated or whether it's more didactic. And I thought that the LCD workshop, really hit the tone perfectly, the balance perfectly. There was a very nice balance of a facilitator being there, and yet there was a lot of peer-to-peer and social learning going on as we would just meet and discuss both in person and then through the online group, the Slack group. I thought it was a perfect balance of both. I'm so excited, as I was saying earlier, about the possibilities. And so I really see long term, I think people have already become more inclined to learn according to an LCD model, like a learning cluster design, because as Crystal really masterfully taught us in the workshop, we're already learning like that. We're already going to YouTube when, like, I had a car issue the other day, and I went to YouTube to watch a video about how to get the little piece on, right? Or if I need to, if I'm looking for a recipe and I realize I don't have a particular ingredient, I go to Pinterest or I go to YouTube and I look for other recipes, so I know what to substitute, watch a video, read a quick article. Like, we're already learning, or I'll ask a friend through Facebook, or I'll, the social learning aspect. So I think that we're already in the mode of learning this way. And now it's up to us, who are the people who are designing learning, to actually ride that wave, like get with the program. And so what I'm seeing is, for me in particular, but certainly for various industries, is I think people are always going to have a choice: the traditional learning, quote unquote, and then you can go the LCD route, whatever that looks like. And I think eventually less and less of the traditional learning is going to happen, and it's all going to be, something akin to the learning cluster model. And maybe the learning cluster model, I could see the learning cluster model really becoming a norm. I think a few things. I think you would see people wherever they are participating physically. They wouldn't go somewhere like to a classroom, or to a lounge area or what have you. I think they'd probably be accessing learning and talking to their cohort, like on their phone or on their laptop while in transit or at their home office. I think if you were watching it, kind of observing, you would see less gathering in one place to access the learning, and not so much at the same time either. I think it would be spread out according to people's schedules. Oh, I have 15 minutes. Let me go on my phone, and I'm going to do my assignment for the day, and I'm going to talk to my buddy real quick, right? That kind of a thing. I do think that there would be learning management systems that were just so easy. You know how Apple products are so easy to use versus everything else. I could see how if it was the norm, it would be so easy to just go and click and find what you need, learn it quickly, spend a little bit of time on it in a short period of time, move on with your life. Just like we go and Google and YouTube things or wherever we go. And that's how in our personal lives, we're actually consuming and learning, and getting what we need in terms of learning. I think anyone who certainly is in learning and design in any way. I also think people who are in change management. I think people who are looking for ways to take perhaps complex interlacing information and find ways that people will not only get the outcome, the learning objective, and whatever that learning transformation is, but also want it, so it's not such a hard sell. if that's something that people are looking for too, I think that, for example, like marketing, like if you're in sort of like an internal marketing type of role, where you're trying to always, like if people go to you and your team to package information to get it out to people, and if there's a struggle for people to open the emails or to attend the trainings or to consume the content in some way, then I think this is a great model, and becomes so palatable for people, so easy when it's created with their needs and their life in mind, as opposed to here's this chunk of information I'm trying to get you to look at. Right? So yeah, I'd say it's very much for anyone in those categories. I love that question, and I've really seen the possibilities for this for people out there, outside of the traditional business world, perhaps, who are solopreneurs, course creators, coaches, like YouTubers, people who have a skill or a gift, and they do coaching, or, they're teach online courses, etc. I can really see the potential of how learning clusters, the way that it's taught in the workshop, gives you a whole new set of tools with which to create things that, again, as I was saying kind of earlier, it's like work into the flow of people's lives, and you get the same amount of value as the person who has bought the product, right? It still solves your problem, even though you only had to spend, say, 10 or 15 minutes a day over a couple of weeks. For like a busy mom, for example, like a busy working mom, really you're going to lose so many of those potential people if you're a money coach, right? You're a money coach and you're trying to sell an online course, and it requires that you show up for an hour. You got to do an hour of homework or whatever it is. You've lost millions of working moms, right? So if you were to do something like a learning cluster with their life and their needs in mind, as well as what you're trying to teach them, and chunk it, right, and give them an accountability buddy, some support, then you've brought all those people back to who you can sell your product to and make a difference with. So I think the potential is actually enormous.